Thank you for giving me the floor at first. And as a part of Maat for Peace, of course, I would like to welcome all the distinguished guests today. And I emphasize that the United Nations system for monitoring and promoting human rights relies on two main categories of mechanisms. The first one are the treaty bodies, which are committees composed of independent experts responsible with monitoring the extent. The second one are the non-treaty bodies, which include the Human Rights Council and its various mechanisms, such as the special procedures and the UPR mechanism, which is concerned with evaluating human rights records of the UN member states, in addition to investigation committees of the Council to when necessary conducted. The treaty bodies can promote responsible arms trade by highlighting violations results by arms transfer, reminding states for their obligations to end the illicit proliferation of weapons, or urging states not to export weapons to countries experiencing armed conflicts and civil war. For example, the Committee on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights have made several concluding observations on state reports in its list of issues sent to states, emphasizing the need to risk assessments before granting arms export licenses, and the need to deny or suspend such licenses in cases where arms are likely to be used to violate human rights, including economic, social, and cultural rights, of course. For example, in its list of issues for Italy, 6th periodic report in March 2020, the committee urged Italy to provide information on the mechanisms to ensure human rights risk assessments are conducted before the Armaments Licensing Unit grants arms export licenses. This is, of course, consistent with the purpose of Article 7 of the ATT, which relates to risk assessment of arms exports. In the review of Germany, the committee also noted its concerns regarding the lack of adequate assessment of the risk of impact on economic, social, and cultural rights in arms exports, and asked Germany what lessons it intended to draw from the mistakes of previous government regarding the licensing of arms transfer, how to improve the risk assessment of arms export, and whether it could include the risk of receiving government diverting scarce resources from much needed social investments for arms purchases. In another committee, which is the CRC, or the Committee on the Rights of Child, the number of states were urged to ratify the Arms Trade Treaty, which prohibits the export of conventional weapons to any country if they use the weapons to commit genocide or war crimes. In the Committee on the Elimination of Discrimination Against Women, in its General Recommendation number 30 on Women in Conflict Prevention, the committee reaffirmed in paragraph 32 the proliferation of conventional weapons, particularly small arms, including weapons diverted from legal trade, can have a direct or indirect on women as a victim of conflict-related gender-based violence. This is, of course, consistent with several articles of the ATT, especially Article 11. The Human Rights Committee, in its General Comment number 36 on Article 6 of in the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights on the right to life, especially in paragraph 65, emphasized that arms transfer should not include any weapons, ammunition, equipments, technology, or trainings, or any other assistance expected to be used in genocide. Furthermore, state parties must not authorize arms transfer if there are substantial risks that will be used to commit or facilitate acts of sexual or gender-based violence, according to Article 6 and 7 and to the ATT. Moving to the next part, which is the non-treaty bodies, the UPR or the Universal Periodic Review Mechanism, play a role in promoting responsible arms trade by examining countries' human rights records, including issues related to arms trade and its impact on human rights. During the UPR of the DRC, recommendations were made regarding the need to address the accumulation and illicit transfer of small arms and light weapons by improving stockpile management, and of course, developing legislative controls to combat the proliferation of illicit weapons. Recommendations were also made to Germany to amend its arms export control law to comply with the ATT and the common position of the Council of the European Union. ensuring thorough and clear assessment before approving export licenses, with a particular focus on potential of the impact on the misuse of small weapons or small arms and light weapons on women. Furthermore, Germany should align its national legislation with Article 7, Paragraph 4 of the ATT. In contrast, the Human Rights Council special procedures consist of a group of independent human rights experts mandated to report on advice of human rights from a thematic or country-specific perspective. These reports sometimes cover issues relating to arms. For example, in the 2022 report of the Special Rapporteur on the Situation of Human Rights in Myanmar, he confirmed that arms transfer from the UN member states to Myanmar military constitute a serious violation of international humanitarian law and called for the prohibition of such transfers. On June 20, 2024, expert issued a press release calling on major arms manufacturers such as Caterpillar, General Electric, and Lockheed Martin to immediately cease the sale and transfer of weapons, ammunition, and other equipment to Israel, even if they are carried out under valid export licenses. They emphasized that by supplying Israeli forces with weapons, spare parts, components, and ammunition, they risk complicity in serious violations of international human rights law and international humanitarian law, especially in light of recent International Court of Justice ruling ordering Israel to halt its military offensive in Rafah. The experts emphasized that continued arms transfer in the context should be considered international assistance to operations that violate international law and could lead to profiteering from them. They also draw the attention to financial institutions investing in these countries and warning the failure to seize or reduce the business relationships that turn the association with human rights violations into their contribution. Regarding to the Human Rights Council, it issues a number of resolutions relating to strengthening the link between human rights protection and disarmament. One of the resolutions regarding the OPT, or the Occupied Palestinian Territory, called on states to halt the sale and transfer of arms to Israel to prevent further violations of international humanitarian law and international human rights against Palestinians, and demanded an immediate ceasefire, the lift of blockade of Gaza, and the end of the Israeli occupation. The Council also called for measures to prevent the forced displacement of Palestinians and warned against any large-scale military operations in Rafah. Another component, which is the commission of inquiry, fact-finding missions, and investigation committees, all raised concerns about human rights violations resulting from arms transfer carried by a number of countries in conflict zones to one party to the conflict in an irresponsible manner. For example, and the reports of the UN fact-finding mission Sudan emphasized the need to expand the arms embargo imposed on Darfur to include all Sudan to stop the supply of weapons, ammunition, and support to the parties to the conflict. The mission warns of supplying countries of the possibility of their complicity in serious violations, following reports of weapons being supplied to the Rapid Support Forces in Sudan and their use to commit war crimes and crimes against humanity. Finally, the Office of the High Commissioner for Human Rights issues a number of reports emphasizing the link between responsible arms trade and its promotion and the commission of serious violations of human rights and international humanitarian law. The most recent report issued by the office in March 2025 indicated that the continued flow of weapons to conflict zones contributes to violations and atrocities. It called for conducting risk assessment, halting transfers that violate international law, ensuring judicial oversight, and providing remedies for victims with a focus on the need to hold companies accountable. Overall, international human rights mechanisms contribute to promoting responsible arms trade by monitoring and documenting violations resulting from the use of exported weapons, providing recommendations and exerting political pressures on states to stop arms exports to human rights violators, exposing states and companies involved in responsibility, and of course linking disarmament frameworks to an accountable and arms trade. Although they don't have a direct enforcement tools, we know that, they represent an influential moral and legal force in exposing violations, mobilizing public opinion, and pushing states towards more responsible regulation of the arms trade. As we see nowadays, international mechanisms are being subjected to political attacks by states due to their rule in this matter, including the recent diplomatic and political attacks by the Israeli occupation forces. Following April 2024 resolution requiring a halt to arms exports to Israel, the Israeli ambassador considered the decision a disgrace to the UN and accused the Council of Peace against Israel and protecting Hamas. In contrast, Francesca Albanese, the UN Special Rapporteur on the situation of human rights in the occupied Palestinian territory, is being subjected to widespread attacks and targeted attacks on her life and person due to her statements and positions regarding the Palestinian-Israeli conflict. She's been accused of bias against Israel and anti-Semitism due to her exposure of violations committed by Israel and her discussion of illegal arms transfer to Israel. I hope I didn't take long, and thank you all for listening, of course.